welcome to another episode of the BITA Business Podcast. Today I'm here with Michael Danaher from Irish Rail.
Thanks, Chris. Great to be here.
Great to have you. We're here to talk a little bit about yourself and about your role as Head of Programmes and Projects with Irish Rail. So tell us a little bit about what it was like growing up here in Ireland.
Grew up on the west coast of Ireland, County Clare, our Ireland champions, up the banner. Went to school, grew up there. It was like very rural, tough cutter, farmer. And then went to college and moved to the UK and fell into the rail industry kind of by accident on the Docklands Right Railway extension way back in 1991.
And tell us about County Clare. What's growing up in County Clare like?
I suppose because I live between Listonverna and Doolin, you've got beautiful scenery with the burn and like access to outside space was just phenomenal. So love the countryside, love the views, the Cliffs of Moher. It was great.
Nice place to grow up.
Absolutely was. Yeah, we had the matchmaking festival in Listonverna as well, which was a bit of fun.
Sorry, if I was to sit down with, say, friends, colleagues, family, and ask them who is Michael Danaher, what do you think they would say?
He's a straightforward, hard-working individual. He puts his all into everything. Yeah, and he's fussy about detail.
Okay. And do you think somebody, growing up in County Clare and the experiences there has had an influence in, how you've gone on your career and how you've established yourself?
Sometimes when you start to work in the likes of London, Dublin, the big cities, I suppose a lot of your rural learnings in terms of how people kind of took care of each other when there was, events or issues, be it economics or climate events, just the way people used to rally around and help each other. And I think I've taken that into my business, work and life on the railway.
And is there any other influences, do you think, that have had an impact on you in terms of how you work and how you get on with things, get things done?
Well, without naming names, like I watch a lot of sport, I follow a lot of sport, that there would be some key figures that would have maybe gone through difficult times and bounced back to be maybe not even in the same level as where they were before, but even better. So it's that power of resilience by some key sporting individuals that I would follow.
And can you give us examples how that's maybe happened to you in your life, where you've been in a position where you've needed to bounce back after any tough times? Or
well, if we stick to maybe rail projects for the moment, and you have a plan, you're working with everybody, and all of a sudden it doesn't go to plan, and maybe you were responsible for developing the plan, and you beat yourself up because you are, you're proud of your plan. You want it to work out, and when it doesn't, you feel a bit of a knocking, but you've got to get on, work with everybody, and just go again.
Tell us about your early days. Like, what got you into the engineering and the kind of the real side of things?
Yeah, like I just took a break from college, went to London, started to find a bit of work part-time here and there. I just fell in with a sort of a labour hire company, and they were working on the Docklands Light Railway extension from Canary Wharf to Beckton, and they needed some like assistant thermal welding support. So I fell into the railway there, and then started to weld the railway tracks together. That was my first sort of real job on the railway. And then I met a project manager. I told him I'd been at college and I'd like to go back. And he said, I'll give you an opportunity. So I was working with BITA at the time, and they sponsored me to go back to the University of East London. So I was working and going to college part-time, and that's how I fell into the railway.
And what was it like in those early days welding railway tracks?
Because I hadn't done anything like that before. It was brilliant, great. I mean, it was, I just loved it. It was great fun.
And was there skills that you would have had kind of working on the farm and that would have helped with going into that kind of role?
But there was a lot of manual work. So if you're working on a farm, if you're saving hay, if you're cutting turf, it's a lot of manual work. So if you're getting to do a bit of welding, it's just manual work. Just used to it.
And was there any particular aspect of the work that you enjoyed most back then?
I've just seen a fine, shiny, finished weld. Just you've produced something.
Just seeing the final product.
See it, exactly, yeah.
Yeah.
And it works well.
Yeah. And how long would you have been out doing that for then in those early
Look,
days?
for probably for 2.5 years. Then I would have moved on to London Underground in a different role.
So you're now head of projects and head of programs for Irish Rail. Tell us, is this where you thought you would end up, and is this the route that you were always planning to take?
And I didn't know where my path was going to take me, and I'm certainly glad with where I finished up in infrastructure, currently in that position. Like when I left London to join Irish Rail, I just wanted to work for Irish Rail. I just wanted to be working on the railways in Ireland. That was it. I didn't have any ambition beyond that. But then it just gradually started to fall into a position here or there, and applied for other positions, and was lucky enough to land some of those positions and end up as the head of program projects. And I like it because you get to help an awful lot of people straddle the hurdles of compliance, complexities, assurance. There's so many strands to delivering something, so it's good to be in a position to be able to help bring as many along with you as possible.
Just on your career path then, did you have any unexpected turns, or is there anything that you can remember where you were maybe surprised that certain doors opened, or how things went for you?
Um, Not really. I mean, I suppose I had no idea I was going to go into civil engineering. I was doing architecture in college. So to leave college and fall into a thermal welding gang somewhere in East London, like that's what completely changed my career path. So
Yeah. When you say gang, it was obviously
good gang, yeah, that's it. Good gang of lads, yeah.
no, I suppose it'd be really interesting to hear about a failure or a difficult situation that you've maybe had during your career that has taught you a lesson, or it's shaped the way you see things now.
Yeah, I suppose when everybody is delivering projects on operational railways, you're always under pressure for time to ensure the services start on time. And some of the blockades possessions are challenging to get the required work completed. There was a massive one in East London, or in London on the Central Line around 1994, and the project went really well up to a point at the very end when we were removing the last pieces of rail from the track. So the whole layouts were done, signalling commission was done, and one of the rails broke in the air, and it came down and it destroyed one of the newly installed rails 10 minutes before services were to run. This was on the underground. So, Jesus, yeah, I rang the senior chief signalling engineer at the time. Kevin was his name, and explained what had happened. And I was devastated because there had been so much put into the plan, and this blip had happened. And I was working for a contractor at the time, not the client. He was the client, but he rang central control and said that he has a signalling fault to cover for us, and then take the pressure off, reinstate, and move on. I suppose that taught me a lesson that when you're delivering something, expect things to go wrong, but be there to help people rather than knock them and bash them for not getting it right when they did their utmost to get it done right in the first place. That was a big lesson. I've always carried
I
that.
suppose nowadays, from anybody who's on the rail or the underground in London, there's always seems to be quite a few delays here and there, doesn't there?
Yeah, it's everywhere. It's here in Irish Rail. We have our portion of delays too. I won't knock anybody. If I live it, it's tough sometimes when you're trying to do so much. I keep services as punctual as possible.
And is there any other examples then of working, on other projects where things haven't gone to plan and you've maybe had to pivot or do things a little bit differently?
Yeah, like in the middle of you could be in the middle of a blockade and things mightn't just be working out. I mean, it happened once in the Dart, and you just can't quite nail why infrastructure assets weren't maybe lining up where they should be. And I remember one time just clearing a site just to think, take out a drawer and walk the site to find the root cause of the problem, which happened to be a set of points just in a small way put in out of the right distance or in the right location, just by a fraction, but it affected everything. But it took a long time to find it. And the only way I could find it was when I cleared the site, everybody off the site, and just had a walk, had a look, had a think, and found it. Yeah. So I suppose the lesson from that is to be patient, to not keep plowing on, that it'll work out, because it won't. Because when you're dealing with track assets and geometry and signaling and insulated block joints and all this stuff that goes on into the railway, it's got to be right, it's got to be right first time.
Yeah. And then for someone who puts so much effort and would be a hard worker, would you say you'd be hard on yourself then when things like this pop up, or would you have been back in the day?
I would be when something if something goes wrong, but it'd also be I deploy myself when it turns the other way. And when you've got good people around you and you can work with them to find a way out of it. So yeah, first of all, yeah, you'd be sure that happened, but then you're great. You overcame it and moved on. You learn from it.
And what would you say to people that maybe are a bit hard on themselves and struggle to kind of have that patience, you know?
Not to be, you know what I mean? I mean, even to talk about it to someone that, look, this happened and I feel this way because of that happening. Don't be, because you'll ultimately turn it around. It won't go wrong. It won't go wrong on your own. Whereas if you keep it yourself and try and maybe fix something that mightn't be fixable on your own, and you can keep beating yourself and carrying it, like speak about it, find a good mentor.
Have you had mentors yourself growing up?
I'd probably, when you look at mentoring, and how it's formalized in terms of this is what a good mentor looks like. I've probably had informal mentors that are absolutely aligned with what good mentoring looks like without them knowing they're mentors, because that's their being, that's their makeup. You know what I mean? And I think is very important for new people, graduates, apprenticeships, whoever comes into an organization. From day one, they're tied to a mentor, but not just anybody. Somebody that's a really kind of collaborative, and very much into sharing this person's career with everybody and putting them on a pedestal.
And would you still have people like that in your life that you kind of bounce ideas off? And
Oh yes, 100%.
yeah,
Absolutely,
yeah,
I do.
yeah. Tell us a little bit about that. What sort of people you have around you, and when you might speak to them or chat to them about certain things or issues.
So if I'm looking at if I see a particular problem coming down the road that could involve many different departments, there's so many good people in so many different departments that I would lean on, maybe, and do some soundboarding with one or two, and then maybe grab 3, 4 into a room and just do a bit of blue sky thinking and trash away out of it and come up with an idea. And then you've got alignment in within the departments for when the problem that I might have foreseen does arise, to get a way out of it. So I'd always be thinking ahead a bit like that.
Okay. And what advice would you give to your 25-year-old self?
I think because I fell into the railway, like I told you, in terms of welding, I got a really good understanding of what happens on the ground, at simplistic levels, and what the camaraderies are and are not like. So I'd probably want to go back and do it all over again, but maybe I would have done a bit more training and upskilling for myself along the way. Sometimes I dived into the work and so much that I didn't do enough probably of my own personal development. And that's probably one thing I'd look back and probably change. But I love the work, so.
And when you say personal development, can you elaborate a bit on that?
So just in terms of like even public speaking like this in front of a camera, being interviewed, that there's loads of different sides to a person when they start to grow in an organization and become a leader. I would have probably done more in terms of psychology with people, and understanding that the mechanics of collaboration real, and getting deep and dirty with it.
And just coming off leadership then, working on big projects also comes a lot of pressure. How do you deal with the pressure then these days when you are working on huge kind of infrastructure projects?
Well, yeah, sometimes like everybody feels a bit of pressure, you know what I mean? And so long as it doesn't become overwhelming. And so I'd be good at delegate, great team, super team, and also super supports from supply chain. And I always know, for instance, that if we had an incident, there is a contractor to support us that I could just pick up the phone to, and they'll respond. They'll be there. So the support is huge. So in terms of pressure, yeah, it's around delivery, but obviously safety, because you don't want an incident. There's always pressure on safety. It's always in your heart. It's always in your heart, safety, because you want people to go home safe every day. And it is challenging in those tight environments on the railway at night, with so much happening for morning service, etc., etc. But with a good team, the pressure is released.
And have you ever had any incidents where safety has been a problem, and then something's happened, and you felt the pressure and the
Yeah, we would have had incidents in definitely, oh yeah, over my career, um, that would have been, some were tragic, unfortunately, and some were incidents that would have happened in a controlled environment like a possession, which wouldn't be as significant as a tragedy. But yeah, did have a tragedy, and when we're building the Dunboyne line, there was civil contractor working with a subcontractor, and unfortunately, there was a chap who was putting ducting together in a trench. And the guy in the machine got out to help him, and he accidentally hit the lever, and the bucket swung and smacked him on the head and killed him. Yeah, that was a gloomy time on that site. Yeah.
how do you react to something like that, and then how do
Well,
you
obviously
deal with it?
you feel sorrow and devastation for the family and friends of the individual involved, and then for colleagues on the site who have been working with him. With the best, well, like unfortunately, we have a lot of tragedies on the railway. It happens, and one of the best ways out of it for people is to just talk to each other. I mean, and if there's further assistance required, we have an employee wellbeing program. So there's always somebody at the end of the phone to talk to people over such issues. Thankfully, they're rare. They are rare.
In Northern Ireland, sometimes there you would hear, the tracks get closed if there's somebody on a bridge, or there's somebody's. Sometimes they end up being killed on the tracks. Does that happen down? I suppose it happens everywhere.
Feels yeah,
Yeah,
happens a lot. Yeah, and there's lots of protocols and processes in place for colleagues to deal with that. Yeah,
yeah.
emergency services. Yeah.
And I suppose with a lot of it's, if like you mentioned that incident, it was human error. So there's there's very little you can do other than make sure people are trained the right way, and
Or look at the mechanics of the machine to improve and ensure that something like that doesn't happen again. And there has been lots of improvements on life machinery.
okay, great. What do you look for then if you're taking on new staff? Or you're looking to employ somebody. What are you looking from someone that will make them stand out from the rest?
Well, I do like people with a sense of humor. Okay, and I like people to when I'm speaking to them. We do a lot of competency based interviews. So from the stories that they tell me, I start to understand quickly if they're collaborators or not. Because in the railway industry, when you're delivering a project, you really need to collaborate authentically with a lot of people. So you get that from the background stories of the individuals. So I always go after collaboration and a good sense of humor. And obviously, the competencies and the selection is all there before the person comes in the door. But a collaborative approach to solving problems that will come up as part of the interview and how they respond and react to that is very telling.
And how do you keep your staff or your team motivated? During complex projects where the results maybe aren't always immediate.
I tell them they're lucky to work for me. No, no, I don't. I find out, there's so many aspects to the railway and projects. A person might be working on X element today, and you might, at a review, say, look, you're doing X, but is there anything else in the organization that you'd like to even do as a project to present a result to a group on? And just by talking to them about what their likes are, just give them something a little bit away from the day job that gives them a little bit of fresh emphasis. But we also try and move around within the department. We've so many different sections. We can move around for various support for other managers. So keep it interesting.
Do Irish Rail have any, initiatives or anything at the minute for their staff that kind of helps keep them motivated, or tells me about some of that?
Well, for the young staff, we have between the new graduate and apprenticeship programs, like they're rolling programs where the staff members move between departments to give them an overall better holistic view of how the whole company operates. And we recently signed a signaling contract for computer-based interlocking with Siemens, 25-year contract, which has just been announced in the last year or so. And with their graduate program and our graduate program, we will share the learnings from both sides and put the graduates from both companies dovetailing with each other, such that each graduate that eventually comes into full employment as an engineer will have seen the client side, the consultant designer side, the contractor side, so become a more rounded individual and appreciates kind of the full circle of what's required to deliver and work on the railway with each other.
Okay. So you've been involved in some huge infrared projects over the years. Is there any one that stands out the most that you're most proud of?
Yeah, probably the Kildare Route project. We could track on each core to Hazel Hatch and signal it as far as Kildare. Yeah, that was a fantastic project to work on.
Can you tell us a bit more about that? What makes it stand out from all the rest?
So regardless of obviously improving capacity and given the introduction of new stations and infrastructure and track and signal and all that, it was the way it was delivered. So like the corridor was extremely tight, and we had to come up with a plan. There was preliminary designs how we were going to build it, but we must have spent 6 months, a couple of us in a container in Houston, just putting post-its on walls and scribbling on pieces of paper just to come up with a strategy. And once we got the strategy right, we then started to build it based on that strategy with a real collaborative team. And so we had designers, we had stakeholders, we had there was so many councils we went through. There was public interest in it. So we took so many on that journey that when it came to issuing contract and tender documents, we actually had the project built in our own minds because we had spent so much time developing the delivery strategy. So then when it landed on the ground and actually worked out, we were really proud of that because that was complex. But it worked out, it was on time, it was on budget, and there was no significant safety issues occurred on the site. Services ran on the Cork line. Commission weekends were reduced. Yeah, it was a huge success.
And what would be the most common misconception about the rail industry, would you say?
Well, in Ireland, the rail industry is very different to the UK. So sometimes with our suppliers and our contractors, designers that come in from the UK, they're not always great listeners. And so sometimes you have to just take stock and understand. It's like the rules of the game, you know what I mean, before you start to play. And so like in the UK, when the railway was privatised and lots of sections were, farmed out, let's say, we never did that in Ireland. We retained ownership. So our director of infrastructure owns, maintains and operates the railway. So we have self-delivery teams who do a lot of signalling work and track work. Whereas in the UK, a lot is outsourced. So that's just a subtle difference to put through BITA. And I'm the chair of BITA. So it's a good forum to keep the UK market, those who are interested in Ireland, informed as to how we operate here in Ireland.
Tell us a little bit about BITA then and how the rail aspect comes into BITA and BITA Rail and Rail Link and all these different organisations.
Well, I got roped into BITA, just to put that on its eyes. Yeah, I was having a lunch in the Mansion House, and the president, Paul Whitnell, said I'm starting the rail section. I had word with Danaher, and he's going to be my new chair. Tonight, kind of torn with what? But anyway, that's basically how it happened. But Paul said to me that he was aware of the differences between the UK and Ireland. Ireland was getting bigger. BITA had a big platform and following, and he said he'd like me to help him to help the market to understand how things are a little bit different in Ireland. He'd like to start meeting contractors, suppliers, designers who can help each other to understand and work collaboratively together and just learn the rules of the game. So that's how I fell into BITA.
Okay, and how's it been going then so far?
It's been great. No, in fairness, I said to Paul day one, I'm busy. I can't overburden myself. And he said, don't worry. He said, look, I have a team, and he has a fantastic team in London who support us. Everything is organised. Everything is straightforward. Every event is. So in terms of he committed something to me, I committed something to him, and it's worked out really, really well. And the events they're growing. And today was another classic example of BITA being here at Rail Link and supporting something where we saw almost 2,000 people through the doors of the BITA today, which was phenomenal.
Tell us, if you were to look ahead, say in 10 years' time, what would you like to see the Irish rail infrastructure look like then?
I think for managing and maintaining going forward with AI and statistics and data, we're going to have to be more data driven about the decisions we take in all aspects of the assets that have to be maintained and renewed. It would become more cost effective, but it's bringing, and I'm going to include myself in this, older stock for that data-driven AI world to help give us the tools to manage targeted interventions and budgets into the future, because I think that's going to become essential.
Just on BITA then, how do you see BITA growing, BITA Real? How do you see it going in the next foreseeable future then?
Yeah, so we started off light, steady, and slow. We said we're not going to force anything. We do a couple of events, let those who come spread the word to others. And recently we had an event in Cork, which was our biggest to date. And so by just putting on a good platform, a good event, but not too many in a way. You're looking at 4 or 5 a year, not overburdening the market, because people are busy, can't just keep going to events all the time, because it's costly and it's time consuming. And by taking that approach, we're able to use the audience who have seen something tangible, interesting, and exciting as a presentation. And they take that to the market, and we've seen members grow. Like today, we probably secured another 10 members today.
How would you say BITA has helped Irish Rail over the years?
Well, it's only a growing entity. So I think Irish Rail is helping BITA at the moment through my understanding of the Irish Rail market. So when BITA started, like it's only 18 months or thereabouts in gestation at this stage. So because the UK market didn't understand the Irish business, we've started to teach and help them understand how we operate in Ireland. So I think Irish Rail has helped BITA, and now BITA, through those who have been educated through the platform, through the forum, will in time, as we start to deliver more and more projects, help us with the expertise that we need.
Okay. If you were to pitch a message to all the businesses within the BITA network, so whether it be it tech, infrastructure, hospitality, what would it be?
Be pure and authentic. Just don't be selfish.
Collaboration.
Absolutely, 100% collaboration.
Yeah. And is that a big part of your ethos within
Yeah.
BITA Rail specifically?
Within BITA Rail and Irish Rail, with anywhere I've ever been, collaboration, because not all leaders are collaborators. That's a misperception.
What do you do to switch off when you're not talking about rail or working in the rail industry with Irish Rail?
Yeah, well, I like the GA, so I'm secretary of St. Jude's GA Club. You say switch off, that's a little bit of a chore too, but in a good way. It is a real switch off from working on. Children were always involved in the sport. So that's where I go to my downtime, watching matches, standing on the sideline, listening to all sorts of stories and noise towards referees, which shouldn't be happening. But anyway, and also I play a bit of golf when I can from time to time. They're my two go-to places.
And would you take regular time off then? Would you say you have a good work-life balance?
Reasonable. I mean, it's reasonable. Probably good is a bit strong. It's reasonable. I will manage it to get a bit better.
Okay, so at least maybe 1 or 2 days off during the week?
Well, I've Saturday and Sunday off, but that's okay.
Is there anything that you would like to see happen within BITA, within RailLink, or within the whole rail circles at the minute that you're in?
Yeah, I'd like to be able to, and I know we're governed by public spending codes and procurement guidelines and processes, systems, gateways, assurance. There is so much, in some cases, overdriven processes to get something done, that even when it comes to training and overtraining, and what I mean by overtraining is sometimes you could have a training card for the UK where you're competent to do something. You're doing the exact same thing in Ireland, but you're not competent because you have to be retrained. There's overburdening on training on that front. And so if there was a way collectively through BITA, RailLink, and key stakeholders, regulators, etc., that we could take a root and branch review of what are we doing in terms of our cost base to reduce it, to get the work done that's required on the railway in both Ireland and England.
And how easy is it for companies from the mainland, or from England and Scotland and Wales to come and work in Ireland and work on Irish Rail projects?
Yeah, no, like most countries, we have a procurement office, chief procurement officer, and she will issue tenders, expressions of interest. Anybody can apply. It's open, any tenders, and then it comes down to safety and cost, and that's so anybody can pitch and bid for it. Obviously, it's more difficult when you're not established in the country because you'll have all the overheads in terms of office space, everything that goes with having an employee in the state. So those who are in the state are probably best positioned because they don't have that overhead because they've already carried in their business years heretofore.
Okay, so here at RealLink, I've heard a lot of people talking about huge opportunities for businesses within the rail industry here in Ireland. Tell us a little about what's coming up. What should those companies look out for? How are they able to get a foot in the door over here?
Yeah. So like today's announcement with Siemens, 25 years of contract with us to introduce a computer-based interlocking in time that will make it a lot easier for all platform or all projects along the railway to be integrated into the signaling system that will be stable across the network. So we also have expansions for DART, electrification expansions on DART and the rest of the country coming by 2050. We're doubling a lot of our corridors. In advance of that, we want to get some quick wins and improve capacity by passing loops, new platforms, alter some signaling systems on the existing infrastructure just to increase capacity. So between track doubling, signaling, new builds for the DART Plus program, electrifying the network, and the opportunities are huge and vast. And also we're introducing a train protection system, which we don't currently have. So yeah, a lot of good work ahead.
So there would be a need for a lot of companies then to come and help with these projects, because surely, we couldn't do it all ourselves.
And that's why BITA and RailLink are important for us to be able to show and share what's coming down the pipeline for everybody, and then help them to understand how they can become part of the mix to apply bid for these works. And then obviously resources is such a huge issue, and the more heads up and the clearer we are on our strategy, our strategic direction, that helps the supply chain. If we're not clear, they've got to convince boards and directors it's worth investment in Ireland. But if we're not clear on our strategic direction ourselves, they're not able to convince their paymasters who'll be based, London, Berlin, wherever the headquarters of these companies are. So we all need to work clear on strategy.
Yeah, so exciting times ahead then.
Absolutely exciting times ahead, yeah. Great to be part of it.
So, Michael, it's been great chatting to you. It's been really interesting hearing about your early life in Ireland, going over to England, working on the rail tracks, and then now the projects that you're involved with Irish Rail. So thanks very much for your time. It's been a pleasure.
Thanks very much, Chris. It's been great.
Thank you.
Cheers.